the Pacific Ocean. So it would have been a short little jaunt to punch a hole there and put some turbines in to generate electricity, but they decided against it. So in 1956 and 57, the initial 2 turbines supported a population of 4,500 people, and it generated 11.2 megawatts of power. At the time, they installed a 3rd turbine without making it operational, or a 3rd Penstock without making it operational with the 3rd turbine. 10 years later, they put the 3rd turbine online, and that provided another 10 megawatts of electricity. So in 2018, Whitehorse required 50 to 60 megawatts on a cold day, and that's basically 10 to 20 more megawatts that are that can be generated from this dam. And in the summer, our usage is 20 to 35 megawatts. So there's 2 other dams within the Yukon built in the 50s and the 70s. One is at Asiac, and that creates between 10 and 15 megawatts of power. And the other one's at Mayo, the Mayo community of Mayo, and that generates, originally it was generating 5 megawatts, and then they added to it for another 10 to 15. So they're still coming up a little short. So what they do now is they supplement the power with LNG and burning diesel. All 3 of these hydro plants are now linked together through a series of power lines, which Challenger has been involved with. Probably in the last 15 years, Challenger's built over 200 kilometers of power lines up here to support the continuity of the power grid. Currently, we're working on a rehabilitation of one of the original power lines around the Mayo area, and that's 35 kilometers, and that's to support a new operational mine. So we're kind of active with this client all over the Yukon. What happened here at one of the Penstocks is during one of the inspections in the spring or in the summertime, they noticed one of the Penstocks had a bit of a crinkle in it, and they were quite concerned that it would be put offline and it wouldn't be utilized for the winter. So they had to kind of get a handle on it, and they knew it was underground, but they didn't know whereabouts underground. So they gave us a quick call and said, hey, can you come to site and do a bit of a 3D, figure out where this crinkle is in the Penstock. So we happen to have a BLK up here. So we mobilized the site with that afternoon and started to do a bit of a 3D scan and establish control to get down into the site. This is a bit of a picture of the crews heading down, and with the BLK set up. It dropped about 8 meters, so they had to come down 8 meters down the ladder. The BLK was really good for its size. The crews enjoyed using it. It was small, it was mobile, and for the most part, it did a good job. What we ended up doing is having control up top. We brought in from outside using total stations, and then we had targets set up that were then scanned and then brought down through the top of the Penstock area to the access. You can see in some of these pictures, there's numbers and letters on the Penstock, depending on what side you're on, and that was to support the registration of the scans. So back at the office, it would be much easier to piece them all together. So I think the left-hand side had numbers and the right-hand side of the scan had letters. There are a few challenges associated with this job. First of all, it was dark. They did have lights strung up down underground, but they were intermittent and they weren't for the purpose of providing a scan. We provided 37 scans every 5 meters to cover the whole Penstock area. There was quite a bit of echo down within the penstock, as you could imagine. It's metal, so sound travels quite well. And it was loud due to the other two penstocks having water run through them. There was also a third party there from down south that provided rope rescue and all the rigging that was required to do the job safely. The crew had to get some confined space training that morning to be able to safely access the site. Because water flows through the penstock quite regularly, the bottom of the penstock is quite slippery, so it was definitely a bit of a challenge for the guys down there. As well as scanning in a straight line provided some really poor geometry for the scanning. You can see that we mitigated lots of these challenges and ended up getting a very successful product in the end. This is a sample of the scan data. They were looking at this data went to numerous third-party consultants from around Canada and throughout North America. The Energy Corporation pulled out all the stops trying to get consultants on board to try and figure out what was happening from various professional backgrounds. So we provided lots of different cross sections and blown up areas of the scan data and so on and so forth. You can see here on the bottom, this is what we found where the compression was within the penstock. So they were quite curious in that area and whether or not there were any other areas where this had happened. So this is the bottom of the penstock here, and you can see how it's buckled. And this all came from the BLK 360. We also performed a scan up top outside to be able to kind of stitch it all together and give people from around North America a good view of what's happening. So this bottom here, you can see the penstock. The top, there was a staircase, a slope. There was an access road. There was a power pole. There was all sorts of other things happening up there. So they had to come up with a bit of a plan on how to approach the excavation of the damaged area. So all this data came in really handy for them. We worked with Tetra Tech up here as well on coming up with a excavation plan. So what's happened now is the scan was used to figure out how much depth of cover there was over the penstock. They had as-built drawings, but they weren't the best as-built drawings. They were from the 50s and nothing's ever been updated on them. We used our scan to expose the penstock that we had scanned. We were within 10 centimeters of the top based off of where we thought we were and where we actually were. So we were quite pleased with that. The client was ecstatic about that. We excavated an area based on Tetra Tech's assessment of the dam around it to be able to expose the area of concern. And the client brought in consultants that placed strain gauges on the penstock itself to better understand what was happening, if it was under compression, if it was under tension, and how to go about coming up with a fix for it. My understanding is that they decided it didn't need to be fixed this year. It could still operate throughout the winter as is. And in 2021, they will be looking at fixing it and providing a long-term solution. So one of the problems that we had is that when they started excavations, they didn't want to hit the first and third penstock. So we had to lay those out too, and all our calculations worked out. There were no blackouts in the community. There was no emergency phone calls. So It all went well on our end, and the consultant and the owners were very pleased with the information that we were able to provide in a very timely manner. What did we learn here? A couple things. You guys might know them down south. We learned them up north here. But the reflectorless targets used for total stations, they're not picked up by the BLK 360, and they showed up as little black boxes. Also, the amount of light required to be able to have pictures for the BLK is quite a bit. There was good reflectivity for the scan. The white paint along the walls did assist us on stitching everything together. Using the Field 360 instead of Recap, it made downloading and registering the scans much quicker, and it allowed for quicker turnaround time in the office. So that's about it. I don't know if there's any questions or if people have any comments. Feel free.
Regarding the BLK in the dark, it's true here. I thought the BLK had a flash on it on the camera.
Hey, Stefan here. So playing with that BLK, I wouldn't call it a flash. It's probably about the same intensity as the light on your cell phone. So it'll throw a little bit, but it dies super, super quick. So the one other thing that may have helped, I actually just sort of thought about this after the fact. It does have the ability to do the HDR photos. It takes longer to take those photos because it'll actually take 3 photos per photo. It generates a lot more data, but it would do like a low light, a medium light, and a high exposure, low exposure, mid exposure, and make a single image. So we might have been able to get a little bit more out of it doing that at the expense of a little longer setups.
Yeah. I'll just add too that Stefan did all the data processing down south, and he did a great job doing it. And the returns we're able to get in a very timely manner, which kept everyone really happy up here. So hats off to them down there.
Yeah, this is Paul. It's a pretty interesting project. I mean, from YC's perspective, you saw those numbers on power needed in the winter. If they were to lose a turbine, like if that thing failed, it would then go through the turbine, right? So they'd lose a turbine and potentially flood town, which wouldn't make them very popular. But they also wouldn't be able to supply power for the entire Yukon. They wouldn't have had enough generation capacity on a really cold day. So this was a pretty urgent matter for them to deal with.
Yeah.
And it kind of followed, I don't know if many of you remember, we had a virtual project access campaign earlier this year in business development, and this kind of came about right after that. And so we just got a call, said, hey, can you come look at this? We have consultants in the States that can't fly up because of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So we created a fly through and we created a point cloud that consultants from afar could look at. And I saw that all the staff, I wasn't involved in the project at all, but the people in the Whitehorse office were all super engaged in this type of job. And we see that across the company where there's an interesting challenge and we don't know how to do it, but we'll figure it out. And I think the team did a great job.
Yeah.
Do we have a shareable point cloud viewer for this project, and is it something that we can share, or is there privacy concerns?
Oh, it's probably G14 classified. Yeah, I don't have any release of the data for this one. There was articles in the news, the local news, because there was quite a bit of action happening up in the site, and it came across as routine maintenance. So I don't know if people are aware of what exactly happened. So
it's probably not something we should splash on the website. Yeah.
Yeah, the UAV data on the surface with the scan data subsurface is pretty unique and cool.
Yeah. Well, actually, that was just scan data. It wasn't UAV.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we just did 3 or 4 scans up top to tie it all together. And yeah, it gave a really nice presentation to them.
Did you guys say you traversed with the total station down? Like you coordinated the targets or you just placed
We
targets?
coordinated the targets up top in the powerhouse, and then we scanned those and then scanned down, inverted the BLK and scanned down.
Well, you hung it upside down to
Yeah.
be okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. We did that at a mine in Kamloops. I think we hung one of the big scanners upside down to do a scan into a dangerous space. We hung it off a zoom boom and pushed it out into the void. After checking that was okay, of course.
Sounds scary.
Yeah, a little bit.
So is the scanner, how you were able to extend your control vertically down into the penstock then? Or did you use something else?
I believe it was just the scan. We might have shot down for the elevation just to confirm it with the
Hi,
rangefinder.
you've reached Ashley Robertson of Challenger. Thank you.
Did you get that, Richard or
To
Rob?
leave a callback number, press 5.
Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
a mixture of the scanner and maybe a little bit of
Yeah.
extra. That
Yeah.
was the only part I was curious on. Like, it's a pretty cool project, but
Mhm.
I was just wondering about that vertical part of the control.
Yeah.
The scan did get like beyond, especially beyond the damaged area. I did notice it was getting a little bit drifty and hard to constrain. We were sort of past the critical area by then, but yeah, I mean, the cloud to cloud in a straight line was getting a little tricky to constrain. The paint marks really helped, and there was a lot of overlap. So, fairly confident in it, but if we had needed right down to the turbine area, I think we would have had to constrain it a little bit better.
Hey, also, it's Curtis here. I did a bit of work on this. So one thing we did actually at the bottom, just above the turbines in the plant down there, as more of a check, I guess. So we tied a bunch of control down there and tied into the turbines, and I think we were within like 10 centimeters or something like that. And then from that, it was like I said, it's really close. And then we used that to create, I guess, a surface of where the penstock would be. So when they went to excavate it, that we wouldn't puncture the penstock, I guess, or the ones next to it. So when we went to actually dig it out, my surface or Nathan's surface was within like 10, 15 centimeters or something. So we were able to get really close to where the crinkle actually was and could expose it for the client to look at.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. If you do have questions, you can reach out to Marshall or Curtis. Marshall presented, but I have the feeling that Curtis put together the presentation. So thanks to both of you. And I've recorded most of this. I didn't think to record right away, but I'll find a way to get it up on SharePoint or something, or somewhere where people can access it for people who were unable to attend. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your lunch, and thanks to Curtis and Marshall.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.